morning and welcome. We're going to sing two songs this morning for Giving Voice. The first one is by Malvina Reynolds. She's written many songs from way back. One of them you might be familiar with is Little Boxes. And the second one is called Sing About It, and it's a new song, but it's very easy to pick up. Here we go. Love is something if you give it away, give it away, give it away. Oh, love is something if you give it away, you end up having more. It's just like a magic penny, hold it tight and you won't have any. Lend it, spend it, and you have so many, they'll roll all over the floor. Oh, love is something if you give it away, give it away, give it away. Oh, love is something if you give it away, you end up having more. Money's dandy and we like to use it, but love is better. If you have, don't refuse it. It's a treasure and you'll never lose it unless you lock up your door. Oh, love is something if you give it away, give it away, give it away. Oh, love is something if you give it away, you end up having more. So let's go dancing till the break of day, and if there's a piper we can pay. For love is something if you give it away, you end up having more. Oh, love is something if you give it away, give it away, give it away. Oh, love is something if you give it away, you end up having more. If you get too worried, what you ought to do is sing. If you get worried, what you ought to do is sing. If you get worried, what you ought to do is sing. Sing about your trouble and it just might pass. Sing about joy and sing about love and hoping it lasts. Sing about your trouble, and it just might pass. If you get lost, what you ought to do is sing. If you get lost, what you ought to do is sing. If you get lost, what you ought to do is sing. Sing about your trouble and it just might pass. Sing about joy and sing about love and hoping it lasts. Sing about your trouble, and it just might pass. If you are broken, what you ought to do is sing. If you are broken, what you ought to do is sing. If you are broken, what you ought to do is sing. Sing about your trouble and it just might pass. Sing about joy and sing about love and hoping it lasts. Sing about your trouble, and it just might pass. Sing about joy and sing about love and hoping it lasts. Sing about your trouble, and it just might pass.
Morning. So glad to be here with you. Welcome to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. We're grateful to share this space with you. I'm Reverend Sarah Goodman, joined today by Carol Couette, Victoria Safford, and Amy Peterson-Derrick, and supported by Anna Garris and Aaron Scott. Today, right after the service, you're all invited to join with each other for Cyber Social Hour. Come for informal conversation and meet friends old and new. Aaron will put the Zoom link and easy instructions in the chat box. Watch also for in the chat box later for information about our weekly offering and how to text to give. This will be up on a slide a little later, but we welcome your gifts at any time. Welcome to our church. Together we grow our souls and serve the world.
Come in. Come into this space which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide nor pretend nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this space where we can heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this space where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this space. Together we make it a holy space. Welcome. Sean and Sarah Goodman, Jamie and Emily will light our chalice this morning.
Good morning, everybody. We're the Goodman family, and we are lighting this chalice for families and too much together time.
Hi.
Hi.
Please say with me the opening words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Our hymn is Standing in the Need of Prayer. We'll be singing along today with a small ensemble called Charlotte's Web, a group of members here. They made this recording and some others that you'll hear this morning here at church in 2016. They were singing in memory of a dear friend.
Not my brother, not my sister, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my brother, not my sister, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my preacher, not the deacon, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not the preacher, not the deacon, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my father, not my mother, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my father, not my mother, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not the stranger, not my neighbor, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not the stranger, not my neighbor, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer.
As Unitarian Universalists, we draw wisdom from many different sources. The stories that we share with one another come from many different religious traditions, from our own Unitarian Universalist history, from nature and science, and of course, from our own lives and experiences. As a religious educator, I have the privilege of not just sharing some of these stories with you, but observing stories in the making as children, youth, and adults all share wisdom and do the work of growing and serving together. This month's theme of imperfection, the practice of shining, reminded me of a few moments that I spent chatting with a couple of children in our congregation just a few months ago. I had observed these two playing together frequently. They were good friends, so it surprised me a little to see them talking so intensely together one Sunday, surrounded by their parents. I observed them from a distance as they sat around the table together for quite some time. There was worry and sadness and a little exhaustion on their faces as they spoke with one another. There had been a disagreement. As I joined the table, the situation became clearer. Each had felt left out by the other. Both felt hurt, and neither one intended to hurt the other. But even through their sadness and frustrations, I could hear each of them sharing from their own experiences and listening in hopes of gaining a deeper understanding. Conversations like these can be long and tedious, and yet they stayed at the table together. They were doing the hard work of right relationship, of community. But even despite their new understandings of one another and the apologies that had been shared, hurt had happened, and even the most unintended of hurts can be so hard to hold. So together, we talked about how challenging it can be to be a good friend, how much we all wish we could just be perfect friends all of the time, but what we are left with is doing our very best to be loving and understanding and patient and kind, to be in covenant. These are things we struggle with our whole lives, I told them. Sometimes, I said, I wish I had superpowers that could help me be a better friend. If you could have one superpower, I asked, to help you with these struggles, what would it be? We wondered about this together for a moment until one answered, I just wish I could go back in time and fix my mistakes. This resonated for me. I nodded. There were many times that I myself have messed up and wished I could go back and change a thing I said or I did. I'd feel sadness with this, and even sometimes grief. Then the other answered, I wish I could just walk away and feel at peace. This resonated with me as well. A wish not to be able to erase anything, the hard stuff, the fun stuff, and the everything in between stuff of friendship, but to feel a sense of peace with it all, the grief, the joy, the uncertainty, a peace with knowing that these struggles will always be there, but the work of friendship is to maybe hold it all together. Of course, it wasn't more than a moment later that these two were up and playing with one another again, as the way friendships sometimes go, playing, growing, learning together, holding joy and sadness together, holding our imperfections, but ultimately shining all together.
In these uncertain times, your gifts are needed more than ever. Today's offering supports the programs and vision of our church community, so please be generous.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice.
I invite you to join now in a spirit of meditation, a spirit of prayer. And just take a breath of life, spirit of life. Be at home in your body, be at home in your space, be at home in your place in the world. And know that we're breathing together now, all of us. Close your eyes for a moment if you want to, and hold in your mind, hold in your heart, your beloved congregation, people you cherish, people you don't even know, children, youth, adults, in a sanctuary filled with light. Breathe out a blessing to all of them. Breathe in, know that they are blessing you right now. Spirit of life, spirit of love. Today, our prayer is for those on the threshold, seniors in high school, seniors in college, those finishing graduate degrees, each one crossing a bridge from one life into another life, moving from familiar ground into possibility. We see you. We see the work you've done, the bridges you've already crossed. Remember who you are. Remember you're beloved. When you feel the press of expectations closing in around you, when everybody's asking, what will you do next? And wondering how you will make them proud, remember, you weren't born to save this world, but savor it. Love your life and know you are beloved just as you are, no strings attached. Our prayer for you on this threshold is not success so much as joy, not achievement, but integrity. May peace dwell always in your heart and understanding in your mind. And may the light within you shine compassion everywhere. Amen.
May your wishes all come true. May you always do for others and let others do for you. May you build a ladder to the stars and climb on every rung. May you stay forever young. May you stay when the winds of changes shift. May your heart always be joyful, may your song always be sung, may you stay forever young, forever young, forever young. May you stay forever young, forever young, forever young. May you stay forever young.
Our first reading is from Rob Jacks. He begins his poem with this note. On frozen trails of the far north, Inuit people placed 5 stones in rough human form as a testament of endurance and as warm encouragement from those who had gone before to those who were coming after. We were here. We saw sorrow. Across our hearts' emptiness and cold pulled hard as they do in you now, and we pressed on as you will do. We did all that possibility will allow and expect nothing less of you. We stand guard over accomplishment and strong journey through all of this. See in gray desolation how we made this 5-piece thing and left it here. A stone creation to bring you certainty in this drear, frozen waste, showing you and we are keepers of a flame melting chaos. You and we proclaim. Our second reading is from William Stafford, The Way It Is. There's a thread you follow. It goes among the things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you're pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it's hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you can do to stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread.
This week felt heavier somehow. It's different for every person, right? Different inside each person, up and down. For me, it's been many things this week, including in a small way, this glorious springtime, which is raging now against the windows with such aggressive beauty, almost taunting me to be glad in it, which I am. But this lovely spring is also quietly reminding us that things are moving on in spite of us. The seasons are advancing as they do, while we're all still here in this time warp of crisis, moving forward sort of, but not really. It's been anxious this week, confusing, as stay at home transitions to stay safe without sufficient definition. And I know that I am feeling now in week 11 the heavy emptiness of loss and the loss of each of you especially, and all the ways our congregation gathers, which are visceral ways, sensual, tangible, embodied ways of being and seeing and speaking, singing, hearing, listening, touching, holding, and beholding.
We're making new ways for this indeterminate interim time, but the making itself is heavy work, and it is laced with loss. Wine, wine, wine. That's not what Sunday is for. So I'll tell you, there came a moment this week when my whiny spirit was not lifted exactly, but shifted in an unexpected way, a good way, when on Wednesday for several hours, I listened to an online vigil called Naming the Lost. For 24 hours, a group of mostly young adults shaped a simple, haunting memory to those who've died from COVID-19. And it may surprise you that this, of all things, shifted my spirit, but it did. For me, it was the right and needful thing in the right moment. So one by one, each for maybe half an hour, they simply spoke the names, reading from a list on their screen or on their phone, stumbling sometimes with pronunciations, but not stopping, pressing on, sometimes with a city attached to a name or a country, sometimes with an age. 93 years old, 75 years old, 85 years old, so many, many elders. One person was 105, and here the reader had to stop and drink water and swallow the lump in her throat and just breathe her way back to the screen and to the list, which went on. And sometimes the reader would take a breath and whisper a prayer or offer a little song, but mostly they just spoke the litany of names right into the camera, straight into my heart. I kept it on most of the afternoon in the background on an iPad next to my computer, and something shifted for me. I remembered, and why is it so easy to forget? I remembered why we're doing what we're doing, keeping apart, choosing a particular portion of loss in our life as a congregation or as families or workers. With this murmur of names in the background, I think I was brought back to the difference between inconvenience and tragedy, the difference between worry or uncertainty and tragedy, the difference between losing your bearings a little bit and losing your life or your dad or losing your brother or a friend. Perspective helps. This is grief we're in, and it is little and large. Perspective reminds us we're in this together, and this is grief that needs marking, wherever you are on the journey of it. I learned a long time ago from a wise teacher, a mentor who was dying at the time of cancer, who said to me, you know, there is no hierarchy of suffering, or if there is, it's probably a waste of time for you to try and map that out. Everybody's got something. So take a breath, said my friend, and enter in through any door you find. Your own sadness is your ticket. And place your sorrow on the altar of the day next to everybody else's and see what you can learn about compassion. There's no hierarchy of grief. It's more like an ocean. And some of us are standing on the shoreline with our ankles a little wet, and some of us sometimes are waist deep in murky black water, and some are out there thrashing in the wild waves, swimming for their lives, trying to make it back to shore. All of us are in this water always, including those who came before us and those who will come after. In naming grief and marking it, we cast lifelines to each other. Naming the Lost is a vigil that will happen again. You can look for it online. This first event was timed to coincide with Memorial Day, echoing the holiday's intention not to glorify war, but to remember those who've died. To hear those names for hours was heavy and sad on Wednesday, but that vigil, it was infused with light. So much tenderness, those quavering young voices, somehow it shook me loose. It called me back to why this is all so hard and why for now it has to be. It also called me back to the uses of memory and ritual. Years ago, Ross and I were teachers at a small farm school in Vermont, where it was the custom on Memorial Day to visit cemeteries in the little towns nearby. And there were a lot of them. Some in churchyards or next to open fields where churches used to be, and some hidden far back in the woods overgrown with brambles and brush. 20 children, 4 adults. We piled into cars in the early morning and went to maybe 6 or 7 graveyards that day. At the entrance to each one, we joined our hands in a horizontal line, and then we slowly walked the ground, looking down for graves of veterans. And some crumbling stones dated to the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812, the Civil War. And there were newer, taller, smooth granite stones for the 2 world wars in Korea, Vietnam. All these soldiers and sailors now at rest, at ease, sleeping side by side with the civilians. It was a somber kind of game, but it was also lively. It was beautiful in the sunshine, and someone would call out, here's one, and we'd rake the leaves off and replace last year's little faded American flag with a fresh one, and then a child would read aloud the name and the dates on the stone and anything else on there. In some graveyards, we found an area set off to the side, ringed by an iron rail with unmarked smaller stones. And this would be the colored section, where African American or Native American people were buried, and sometimes Jews, or unmarried mothers dead in childbirth, all of them pushed to the margins, even in death. So in those spaces, we cleared off every grave, every stone, and we laid flowers down and planted flags. Before leaving each cemetery, we made a circle by the gate, fidgety children, and someone played the recorder and someone read a poem, and we said together, let us not forget, before piling in the cars. Some of these students were in high school, but some were only 5 or 6 years old. So they were remembering a history they'd not yet even learned, wars they'd never heard of, sadnesses they could not yet imagine. And it all felt right and fitting, the reading, the music, the circle, so simple, so solemn. But by the end of the day, we were all punchy and playing hide and seek among the tombstones and laughing and running and shouting and eating snacks, kids fighting over whose turn it was for the front seat. And that was right and fitting also. Like all rituals, this one was trying to teach us, adults and kids together, to remember how living and dying are all of a piece. How every life deserves marking and mourning and naming and respect, even if the name's been rubbed away or was never inscribed, or even if, as in our current time, there are 94,000 dead in your country alone. And it takes a whole day and a whole night to read the names. Ritual reminds us how the little stories of our own small lives fit within a larger whole, and they touch everybody's. And it teaches how kindness and courtesy matter for the living and the dead, those we know, those we don't. We're all in the water together. In the poem that Sarah read to us just now from Rob Jacks, he imagines what was in the minds of long ago Inuit people who left signs of encouragement on frozen trails for future travelers. 5 stones arranged in human form. We were here. We saw sorrow. Across our hearts, emptiness and cold pulled hard, as they do in you now. And we pressed on, as you will do. We did all that possibility will allow, and we expect nothing less of you. See in the gray desolation here, how we made this 5-piece thing of stone and left it here to bring you certainty in this drear, frozen waste, showing you and we are keepers of a flame, melting chaos. You and we proclaim. It's in times of struggle that we unpack what's been bequeathed to us by those who went before. They didn't know this struggle, maybe, but they did see some things. Our ancestors, our parents, lovers and beloved friends who've died, they didn't know this struggle that we're in, and it's hard to imagine how we could even explain this to them, trapped as they are on the other side of history, the other side of March 2019. But they did see some things, and they speak to us now about how to get through it, how to go on. It's in times of struggle that we sift through memory and character and discern the kind of people that we are, the kind of people that we come from. And at the same time, exactly the same time, we're deciding every day, proclaiming what kind of people our children will come from. Our own kids and all of them, the generations coming up, the ones who are watching us now and they're wanting to know, how do you honor the dead? How do you honor the living? How do you comfort those who mourn? What's the best way to carry grief or conjure hope or leave a sign or cast a lifeline to somebody who normally looks fine, but this week might be drowning? This week on Wednesday, our reading for reflection was from Teresa Soto, Unitarian Universalist minister in California. They ask, can we develop the skill of remembering the future? Can we commit to building the community that will extend into a time that we only know by memory because it will outlast us? Memorize, they say, the compass points of the day yet to come. The truth, the love, the fire, the endless yes of the horizon. Shake the scales from your imagination. Reach, stretch, rise. There is no more time for pretending that everything can be all right without your care, your attention. You can mourn, grief being more real at times than the promise of the sunrise. And yet, says Teresa Soto, while we mourn changes, losses, deceptions, betrayals, beneath the ashes, we find the embers. We weep, and then as we learn from the labor movement, we organize. Remember the day toward which we gather, the tomorrow toward which we're advancing. It's with your actions today that you engage that muscle memory, the ragged velvet feel of a day that you've never lived. It's also your day. Remember it well. What stories will they tell of us? The people who look back years from now on this Corona time. What markers are we leaving for them to encourage them to leave a trail? I want them to look back at us years from now and say, those people back in 2020, 2021, they were really strong and they didn't even know it. They named their grief and marked it even as they were swimming in it, and they named their joy deliberately. They saw the spring and they stuck together with more care for the common good than for their own convenience, more care for the most vulnerable than for the rich and privileged. They never lost sight of the future, even when it felt foreclosed. And we are living proof of that, they'll say. We are their children and their grandchildren, their descendants. We are the future they imagined way back then. So I'll tell you one more story. A few weeks ago, I read about a woman in New Jersey, Tanisha Brunson Malone, 41 years old. She is a forensic technician in a hospital morgue, and she's doing work she says she knew she wanted to do even as a little kid, figuring out how the human body works and why it stops working when it does. It is so interesting how people come into their vocation. So she performs autopsies, preparing bodies for funerals, and she's always loved her work, which she approaches like a calling. But these months of COVID have been different. Since March, the morgue where she works has had to expand into an adjacent parking garage where bodies are stored in 3 refrigerated tractor trailers and 1 more in the parking lot outside. The weight of it began to weigh her down. Her shifts are longer on both ends now than they ever used to be, and at the end of March, she knew something had to change, and so she began a daily practice which is saving her. Every day before work, and sometimes after work also, she goes to the Metropolitan Plant and Flower Exchange, a wholesaler, and she buys up all the daffodils they have. Sometimes she has to settle for carnations, but every day she goes to work with armloads of yellow flowers, and every day she goes through that morgue, and then she goes out to those trailers, and she places a flower on every single body bag. She's a technician. She's a scientist. She approaches the human body and death in ways that most of us are never going to, not afraid or repulsed, not sentimental. But it broke the flesh and the blood of the heart inside her own chest to see all those people there like that, in a place where their loved ones cannot visit, and most of them died alone. She doesn't make a lot of money, but right now she's spending about $100 a week on flowers, even with the discount from the florist who found out what she was doing. And no one sees those daffodils but her and the funeral directors who come to pick up the bodies. One guy says that he and his crew, pretty tough crew, they just cried the first time they saw it. And they sometimes still do, unexpectedly. Tanisha Brunson Malone says, it just feels like the right thing to do. She says it's really as much as for her as for anybody else. But I say it's a sacrament. It is a proclamation where without any words, she says to the people one by one, I see you, I honor you, I speak your name. And this humanizes all of us. It binds us in sorrow and suffering and love. It's a benediction. And there is nothing, I think, in her extensive training in anatomy that could ever explain where exactly inside us wisdom and generosity and decorum reside, how those find their way into our DNA. How do we learn to be the humans that we are? How do we teach each other? What do we mean to pass on? When we're remembering the future, the tomorrow toward which we're advancing, what do we want that even to look like? What kind of people living in that world? There's a thread you follow, says the poet. It goes among the things that change, but it doesn't change. This is the thread, I think, that winds through every funeral and memorial, every Memorial Day parade, through every wedding and welcoming of babies, every commemoration and graduation, whether it's on Zoom or in an arena or wherever. These are the markings at the trailheads of our lives. And it feels sometimes as if we're lost, as if everything's come undone and we can't find our way. But there's a thread we follow, says the poet. It goes among the things that change, but it doesn't change. And people wonder about what you're pursuing. And you have to explain about the thread. It's hard for people to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen. People get hurt. They die. You suffer. You get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of that thread. Remember who you are, friends, and remind each other the kind of people you come from, who are weary and worn but shining with love, honorable. Name the grief and name every glimpse of gladness you can see, the greening world, the kindness of strangers, the faces of friends fuzzy on your screen waving. Name the lost and the living. Honor all things lost and honor all that isn't. Consider every day now, what would be worthy of those who came before us? What would bring honor to their memory? What would be worthy of all those who are coming up next? For just a moment, let's hold silence here together. We're going to sing together one more time, sing along with the little church ensemble, Charlotte's Web. There is more love somewhere.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on
Please join me in the closing words. May peace dwell within our hearts and understanding in our minds. May courage steel our will and love of truth forever guide us. Friends, thank you for joining us. If you want to receive our email news twice a week, go to our website and sign up. We'll send updates twice a week about online services, groups, and gatherings and circles of care. Call or write to us with your questions or to ask for help or to offer help. We are sending love to you from 328 Maple Street and all of our locations. Stay strong and please stay well, everyone. So be it. See to it. Amen.